That's why I believe I survived, because you have to either have fear or respect. And I didn't understand respect, so I feared everything.
While Snoop Dogg was affiliated with Long Beach's Rollin' 20 Crips before Dr. Dre discovered him, Ice-T ran with Crips in LA before portraying a detective on Law & Order, SVU, and Nipsey Hussle was a Rollin' 60s Crip who bought back Crenshaw Boulevard. But wait until you hear about the rapper who survived 9 gunshots. Snoop Dogg. Picture Long Beach, California in the early 1990s, a landscape of swaying palm trees casting shadows over neighborhoods divided by invisible but deadly lines. This was the world that shaped Calvin Broadus Jr., the tall, lanky kid with a drawl smoother than smoke, the young man who would eventually be known to the world as Snoop Dogg. For Snoop, gang affiliation wasn't a choice made one dramatic day. It was an inevitability woven into the very fabric of neighborhood life. Growing up in Long Beach meant navigating the gravitational pull of the Rollin' 20 Crips, one of the city's most notorious sets. In neighborhoods where legitimate opportunities were scarce and survival often required choosing sides, the gang became an extension of the neighborhood itself. Snoop himself would later reflect on this reality with characteristic honesty. "Where I'm from, you couldn't escape it. The gang was in the neighborhood." This wasn't an excuse, it was simply the truth of his existence. His early years were punctuated by brief stints behind bars, each arrest a reminder of how easily a life could be derailed. The pivotal moment came when one of his homemade rap tapes found its way into the hands of Dr. Dre. What Dre heard was something special, a voice that could turn street vernacular into poetry. When Dre featured Snoop on The Chronic 1992, it wasn't just a career breakthrough, it was a portal to an entirely different universe. Almost overnight, Snoop transformed from a Long Beach corner fixture to hip-hop royalty. Behind the lazy flow and laced beats was a man who had learned to maintain his composure in absolute chaos. The same ability to stay cool when tensions were high on the streets served him well in the cutthroat music industry. While Snoop found his path through laid-back charisma and West Coast cool, another artist was taking a completely different approach, one built on hustler's instinct and raw intelligence that would eventually lead him from the streets to a detective's badge. Ice-T. Long before he became Detective Odafin Fin Tutuola on Law & Order, SVU, Ice-T knew the streets with an intimacy that no script could capture. Born Tracy Lauren Marrow in Newark, New Jersey, his early life was marked by devastating loss. Both parents died before he reached high school, leaving him to navigate adolescence without anchors.
I came to Los Angeles and got into high school out there, and I was involved with the street gangs in Los Angeles for about 4 years. Then I elevated from like street gang just to basic street crime.
The move to Los Angeles came at a crucial juncture. The city he landed in was already deeply divided by color lines that marked gang territory. In the early 1980s, Ice-T found himself gravitating toward the Crip scene, attracted by the combination of protection, belonging, and economic opportunity that drew so many young men into gang life. But Ice-T maintained a crucial duality. As he would later explain, "I was the kid with a foot in two worlds. I understood the hustle, but I wanted the mic." This dual consciousness, navigating street life while pursuing artistic ambitions, would prove to be his salvation. He built reputations as both a hustler and a wordsmith who could articulate the logic and pain of street life with brutal precision. When Ice-T dropped Rhyme Pays in 1987, it was the first hip-hop album to carry the Parental Advisory label. This wasn't just shock value. Ice-T's approach was fundamentally different. He didn't glamorize the streets. He dissected them with almost journalistic precision, exposing the cold logic behind survival decisions. Songs like 6 in the Morning and Colors weren't celebrations. They were documentaries set to beats, unflinching examinations of life in Los Angeles' most dangerous neighborhoods. The irony of his career trajectory isn't lost on anyone. The same man who once ducked police sirens has spent over 2 decades portraying a detective on television. If Ice-T was the hustler who rewired the game through duality and adaptation, Ice Cube represented something different entirely, the cold, calculating architect who would use his intellect to systematically dismantle and rebuild his entire world. Ice Cube. If Snoop Dogg represented laid-back cool, and Ice-T embodied the hustler's duality, then Ice Cube was the architect, the coldly analytical observer who could see larger patterns shaping his community. Growing up as O'Shea Jackson Sr. in South Central Los Angeles, Cube had a front-row seat to how gang culture shaped, defined, and too often destroyed his neighborhood.
Who were you at 14 years old? Were you ever part of a gang? Were you a gangster? And if yes, who were you with?
Growing up in the neighborhood, you make choices. Now, everybody in the neighborhood is affiliated. Like, you can't be neutral. The neighborhood I come from is called Neighborhood Crips.
What made Cube unique was his position, close enough to see everything clearly, but maintaining enough distance to analyze rather than just experience. Though never formally initiated into any gang, his daily life was completely intertwined with the Crips and Bloods rivalry that turned neighborhoods into war zones. But Cube's response was distinctive. He began documenting it, analyzing it, and ultimately creating art that forced America to confront what it had allowed to happen.
You know, we growing up, we figuring out which direction we want to go. We 10, 12, 11. I start playing sports. I'm into football, I'm into basketball. And then I get into this rap stuff. Not too many people in my neighborhood was into it. As far as doing it, they all loved it.
When Ice Cube joined NWA alongside Dr. Dre, Eazy-E, DJ Yella, and MC Ren, the group became unprecedented, a megaphone for a generation systematically ignored and brutalized. Their music, particularly Straight Outta Compton, 1988, wasn't just entertainment. It was testimony, documentation, and indictment wrapped in aggressive, uncompromising beats. Tracks like The Police weren't random provocations. They were carefully crafted responses to systematic harassment and brutality. When Cube rapped about being profiled and brutalized simply for existing in his own neighborhood, he was articulating experiences that millions understood intimately, but that mainstream white America refused to acknowledge. The FBI warnings and political condemnation only proved his point. Ice Cube's story gets even more interesting after he left NWA at the height of their success. Walking away was an enormous gamble that launched one of hip-hop's most successful solo careers and eventually transformed Cube into a Hollywood powerhouse. Solo albums like Ameri KKA's Most Wanted, 1990, and Death Certificate, 1991, were even more politically charged than his NWA work. Then came the films. Boys in the Hood, 1991, showcased his acting chops, but Friday, 1995, which he wrote and starred in, revealed another dimension. Here was the same man who had written rap's most aggressive protest music creating a comedy that captured everyday reality of South Central with humor and humanity. Barbershop 2002 continued this trajectory. While Cube methodically architected his way out through calculated planning and political consciousness, another visionary would take a different approach, one rooted in economic empowerment and the radical act of buying back the very blocks that tried to claim him. Nipsey Hussle. On the corner of Crenshaw and Slauson, in the heart of South Los Angeles, once stood a young man named Ermias Asghedom, lean, soft-spoken, but with an intelligence that cut through chaos like a laser through fog. Born to an Eritrean immigrant father and an African-American mother, Nipsey grew up at the intersection of multiple identities, giving him a perspective simultaneously rooted in his neighborhood and connected to a wider world. The neighborhood that shaped Nipsey was ground zero for Los Angeles gang culture, and the gravitational pull of the Rollins 60s neighborhood Crips, one of the largest Crip sets in the entire city, was impossible to resist. Like so many before him, Nipsey was drawn into gang life by the need for protection, community, and economic opportunity in a neighborhood where legitimate pathways seemed non-existent. But even as he navigated gang life's dangerous realities, Nipsey was different. He was reading, studying, absorbing knowledge from every source. As he would later explain, I was hustling, but I was reading too. I wanted ownership. This dual focus, surviving in the streets while educating himself about economics, business, and wealth building, became the foundation of everything he accomplished. Nipsey's early mixtapes, including Bullets Ain't Got No Name, 2008, and Crenshaw, 2013, weren't just street anthems, they were manifestos about economic empowerment, detailed explanations of how poverty and neglect created conditions that trapped young black men in cycles of violence and incarceration. Nipsey didn't glorify gang life, he dissected it with sociological precision while pointing toward alternatives. What set Nipsey apart was his commitment to turning philosophy into concrete action. When his debut album Victory Lap 2018 dropped, earning a Grammy nomination, it played like a comprehensive blueprint for community rebirth. But Nipsey wasn't content to just rap about change, he was actively creating it. He bought property on Crenshaw Boulevard, opened the Marathon clothing store, and hired local youth, including some from his former gang set, giving them legitimate employment and teaching them about business ownership. He partnered with Vector 90, a co-working space and STEM center designed to bring technology education to South Los Angeles. When Nipsey Hussle was murdered on March 31st, 2019, shot in front of his own store, the world mourned not just a talented rapper, but a visionary leader. While Nipsey's vision centered on economic transformation and community ownership, another LA artist would take a more direct approach to peace, one forged in the fire of near death and driven by the determination to prevent others from suffering the same fate. The Game. In Compton, California, colors weren't fashion choices. They were survival codes that could mean the difference between life and death. For Jayceon Terrell, Taylor, known as the Game, this reality was brutally personal from his earliest memories. Raised among the Cedar Block Piru Bloods, Game grew up balancing competing demands that would have broken most people. The complexity of his situation was amplified by family tragedy. His older brother, a Crip, was shot and killed when Jayceon was still a teenager, an early taste of the brutal cycle consuming so many young men around him. Then came October 2001, the moment that should have ended the Game's story before it began. He was shot 5 times and left for dead. During the long, painful recovery, months of physical therapy, surgeries, and rehabilitation, something shifted. Faced with mortality in the most direct way possible, he made a decision. He would immerse himself in hip-hop, studying classic albums with scholarly intensity and crafting his own sound. "I had 2 options, die or rap about why I didn't," he later explained. This wasn't hyperbole, it was a simple fact. For someone with his history, the usual pathways forward had been closed off, but hip-hop offered a different path, a way to transform all the pain, anger, and trauma he'd accumulated into something sustainable. When Dr. Dre discovered him, the release of the documentary, 2005, transformed his near-death experience into platinum prophecy. The album wasn't just commercially successful, it was emotionally groundbreaking, offering an unflinching look at gang life in Compton. His lyrics bled authenticity, carrying a mournfulness that set him apart, a sense of mourning for all the potential destroyed by gang warfare. But perhaps the Game's greatest legacy isn't in platinum plaques, it's in his tireless work for peace in Los Angeles. Despite having every reason to remain loyal to gang divisions that nearly killed him, he became an outspoken voice for reconciliation, frequently organizing community events, urging unity between rival Bloods and Crips sets. The Game's life proves that redemption doesn't erase the past, it redefines it, using it as the foundation for building something better, rather than allowing it to remain a permanent limitation. His willingness to speak openly about his gang past while working actively for peace represents courage often overlooked. While the Game survived near death in Compton to become a peacemaker, another figure would transcend even death itself, becoming a martyr whose revolutionary vision continues to spark change decades after his murder. Tupac Shakur. Few names in hip-hop history evoke the combination of reverence, pain, and unfulfilled potential that surrounds Tupac Amaru Shakur. Though not officially a gang member, Tupac's entire life was surrounded by, informed by, and ultimately consumed by the energy, anger, and despair that birthed gang culture in American cities. Born in Harlem to Afeni Shakur, a prominent Black Panther Party member, Tupac was literally a revolutionary by blood, inheriting a legacy of resistance and political consciousness that would inform every aspect of his too short life. His childhood was nomadic: Harlem, Baltimore, Oakland, each city leaving its mark, each location adding layers to his developing worldview. When he arrived in California, Tupac found himself among young men who wore red and blue, not as fashion, but as survival strategy. He understood their rage intimately. He'd lived it in different forms in every city he'd called home, and he turned that understanding into poetry that transcended simple street narratives. Songs like Brenda's Got a Baby humanized teenage mothers abandoned by society. Keep Your Head Up offered encouragement to Black women navigating impossible circumstances. Changes and Two of America's Most Wanted dissected systemic oppression and inner-city violence with analytical precision, but Tupac's charisma and unwillingness to back down made him both symbol and target. He was caught in the violent East Coast-West Coast rivalry, a musical manifestation of gang mentality that turned artistic competition into something deadly. His association with Death Row Records and Suge Knight pulled him deeper into the dangerous intersection of music industry and street politics. When Tupac was killed in Las Vegas on September 13, 1996, at just 25, he had already transcended hip-hop's boundaries. His interviews revealed a brilliant intellectual who quoted Machiavelli and Shakespeare. His writings showed a poet grappling with contradictions, celebrating thug life while mourning its costs. He remains, even in death, the voice of transformation and its complications. As he once said, "I'm not saying I'm going to change the world, but I guarantee I will spark the brain that will change the world." This captures something essential about Tupac. He understood his role wasn't to provide answers, but to ask the right questions. Where Tupac's revolutionary poetry came from a place of political consciousness inherited from the Panthers, other artists would document gang life from the inside, none more authentically than Compton's own street chronicler who turned pain into precision. MC IHT. Before Compton was mythologized by Hollywood, it was MC Eight's domain, a rapper who painted its streets with haunting realism. Born Aaron Tyler, Eight came up when the Tragnew Park Compton Crips ruled local blocks. He was close enough to the gang lifestyle to see its true cost. Friends lost, dreams dimmed, hope cracked by gunfire. When Eight joined Compton's Most Wanted, he turned that pain into precision. His voice carried the exhaustion of the streets, slow and deliberate, like someone who had seen too much too soon. The group's albums, particularly It's a Compton Thang, 1990, offered unfiltered glimpses into life in Compton's most dangerous neighborhoods. MC Eight's most culturally significant moment came with Straight Up Menace, featured prominently in Menace II Society, 1993. The song became more than a soundtrack cut. It became a cultural document capturing the hopelessness, rage, and complicated morality of young black men trapped in circumstances offering no good options. But Eight's story doesn't end with those early classics. As years passed, he evolved, focusing increasingly on storytelling, community work, and mentorship. He became a bridge between eras, someone who could speak with authority about the golden age of West Coast hip-hop while remaining relevant to contemporary audiences. "You can represent your city without killing it," he said, a statement encapsulating his evolved philosophy. This represents something crucial about growth in hip-hop, the recognition that authenticity doesn't require perpetual violence, that representing your neighborhood can mean building it up rather than tearing it down. While Eight chronicled the blue side of Compton with exhausted precision, another producer would represent the red, but his genius would eventually build bridges across the very color lines that divided his city. DJ Quick. While MC Eight chronicled Crips territory, DJ Quick represented the red. Born David Marvin Blake, Quick was associated with the Treetop Piru Bloods, and the rivalry between the two would later spark lyrical tensions that mirrored real street politics. This wasn't just artistic competition. It was representative of deeper divisions that had claimed countless lives. Yet Quick's musical genius was undeniable, regardless of which side of the color line you represented. Self-taught musician with preternatural gifts, he could make drum machines sing with soulful expressiveness and craft bass lines that grooved like live instruments. His production style was distinctively funky, drawing from P-Funk and West Coast R&B traditions. His debut album, Quick Is the Name, 1991, went platinum, establishing him as one of hip-hop's most talented producers. But what made Quick truly special wasn't just commercial success, it was his musicianship, his ability to play multiple instruments, his understanding of composition that went beyond loop-based production, dominating early 90s hip-hop. Over time, Quick learned to use his success and musical talent as a bridge between divided communities. He started producing for artists on both sides of the gang divide, working with Crips-affiliated rappers despite his own blood connections. This wasn't about betraying his roots. It was recognizing that music could transcend the artificial boundaries that street politics imposed. While Quick learned to bridge divides in his West Coast home, 3,000 miles away, another artist would face death more directly than almost anyone, and turn survival itself into an empire that redefined what a hip-hop mogul could become. 50 Cent, New York City, specifically South Jamaica, Queens, wasn't marked by blue and red color lines. The divisions here were carved by housing projects, street corners, and drug territories. For Curtis Jackson, who would become 50 Cent, this world became his entire universe after his mother, herself a drug dealer trying to survive, was murdered when he was just 8 years old. By his teens, Curtis was deep in the street economy that had killed his mother, hustling to survive, dealing on the same corners where she had operated, caught in a cycle that seemed impossible to break. The streets of South Jamaica weren't just his neighborhood, they were his school, his family, his entire social structure. Then came 2000. He was shot 9 times at close range, including a shot to the face that went through his cheek. The attack was brutal, clearly intended to kill. That he survived at all was remarkable. That he retained the ability to speak and rap after having his mouth reconstructed was nothing short of miraculous. The recovery period gave 50 Cent something he'd never had: time to think, to reflect, to consider what he wanted his life to become. He funneled all the raw energy, anger, and survival instinct that had kept him alive into music with single-minded focus. His breakthrough came when Eminem discovered him, and Dr. Dre agreed to produce his debut. Get Rich or Die Tryin', 2003 wasn't just an album, it was a declaration of war against the circumstances that tried to kill him. The title itself was telling. This wasn't about getting rich for luxury's sake, it was about survival, about making it out by any means necessary. But 50 Cent's story doesn't stop at musical success. He transformed his near-death experience experience and street instincts into empire building on a scale few rappers have achieved. He founded G-Unit Records, made savvy business deals including his famous vitamin water investment that netted him an estimated $100 million, and moved into television as executive producer on shows like Power and BMF. Today, 50 Cent is less a rapper than a mogul, still ruthless, still competitive, but now his battleground is the boardroom. His rise proves that survival is a transferable skill, that the same instincts that allow someone to navigate street life can become strategies for legitimate business success when properly redirected. If 50 Cent proved that New York hustle could build entertainment empires, down south, another artist was simultaneously creating a new musical genre while navigating his own journey from repeated incarceration toward becoming the South's most articulate voice for redemption. T.I. In the heart of Atlanta, before the city became synonymous with trap music and overtook New York and Los Angeles as hip-hop's commercial capital, there were neighborhoods carved by struggle as intense as anything in Compton or Queens. Clifford T.I. Harris Jr. was born into that world, a young hustler chasing fast money in a city just beginning to assert its place in hip-hop geography. By his 20s, T.I. was caught in a cycle that had consumed countless young men, in and out of jail for drug charges, weapons charges, probation violations, each arrest adding to a record that seemed to be writing his life story before he'd had a chance to write it himself. The criminal justice system had him marked as just another young black man destined for permanent incarceration. But behind the bravado was a man searching desperately for purpose, for a way to transform the intelligence and charisma that made him successful in illegal endeavors into something sustainable. His breakthrough albums, Trap Music 2003, Urban Legend 2004, and King 2006, didn't just define Southern hip-hop. They introduced the world to a new archetype, the trap philosopher. T.I.'s music was characterized by duality, celebrating success while acknowledging its costs, detailing street life while critiquing the systems that made it necessary. The trap isn't just a place, it's a mindset, and I had to escape it twice, once physically, once mentally, he explained. This recognition that leaving the streets physically wasn't enough, that you had to fundamentally change how you thought, distinguished T.I. from many peers. His legal troubles continued, even as his career flourished, culminating in a federal weapons charge in 2007. But T.I. used even this setback as an opportunity for growth. He negotiated a deal that included extensive community service, particularly speaking to at-risk youth about consequences of street life, turning his mistakes into teachable moments. T.I.'s life stands as a mirror for millions of young men who grew up believing there were only two choices, jail or death. He added a third option, reinvention, and spent years demonstrating what that reinvention could look like in practice. Thanks for watching. Check out other cards on the screen.